Hello, everybody. I will be talking about Pro Wrestling Noah. Recently, there have been some rumors about there being a split within Pro Wrestling Noah, and I thought I would talk about that. But first, I want to talk about some of the things that will put this split into context, and at the end of it, I'll talk about some potentially good news for Pro Wrestling Noah in the future. But basically, things in Noah have been quite bad, and it really started in about 2008 for them when they lost their NTV deal. Now, NTV is a network TV channel in Japan. Now, their TV deal, even though they were on at like 1 or 2 in the morning, it was still a strong TV deal because network TV is just head and shoulders above satellite or cable TV in Japan. If in moving from network TV to satellite TV, you could really expect your viewership to just be realistically a fraction of what it once was. You know, we're talking like a quarter, 15%, 10% of what it once was, depending on the satellite channel that is. And this was announced late 2008, enacted in 2009, and then as we know, not long after that, Mitsuharu Misawa died. Now, they were doing okay, having just lost their TV deal. They were really building up some new stars. Go Shizaki, his reality show, or they were trying to build some new stars, really. But when Misawa died, things really did take a turn for the worse. See, it didn't just hurt their ability to draw. I mean, initially it helped because there was a lot of people who wanted to pay their respects to Mitsuharu Misawa. So they were turning up to shows and leaving flowers and things. But since then, it's gotten quite bad, and the reason for that is, there's many reasons. There's constant injuries. The fact they don't have a TV deal anymore limits their exposure to the general public. And another thing that nobody's really touched on since the death of Misawa, or some people have touched on it, but not really to a massive extent. Since the death of Misawa and the loss of their NTV TV deal, is that they would be getting probably less from their shows. Now, organising a tour is different from that in the US. If WWE wants to run a show in Seattle, they invest the money themselves. They pay for the advertising. They send people out on the street and pay for them to advertise the show. They pay for radio and TV advertising, etc., etc. In Japan, it's done quite differently. If a house show is going to happen, it means that someone else has booked that promotion to come over and run the show there, which means a local investor or a local promoter has said, oh, I want to run a pro wrestling show, I've got to pay a certain fee to get the show here, and I'll get a return of the gate, like a certain amount from the gate, and hopefully it'll be profitable, if not the whole gate itself, and they'll pay a large fee. So the show has to draw for them to make their money. So they've got to promote it well at the same time. But if a promotion has no network TV anymore, has lost their biggest star in Mitsuharu Misawa, one of their biggest stars, and another one of their biggest stars, which is Kenta Kobashi, is injured, they're less likely to see that as something that is financially viable for them. They're going to think it's going to be very hard for us to draw the required amount of fans to make money from this, for me to be profitable. So there. But even with Misawa and Kobashi, when Misawa and Kobashi were still around, a lot of the times these guys would still run the shows, knowing they'd be at a loss just because they wanted to hang around with the stars. So that's basically what a money mark is. They wanted to hang around with the stars, they wanted to bring them into their local community, and for whatever reason, maybe they ran a business in the area and they wanted to promote their business, so they brought them in, and you get the idea. And because they don't have the kind of exposure they had before, or the stars they had before, that's got to be tough for them to still get those same people wanting to run shows in their area. So with all these factors, them being not drawing as many fans to major shows, not getting the kind of minor shows they need to really make some money, the loss of TV revenue, things have been quite tough financially for Noah. Apparently people at the front office haven't been paid, or the paychecks have bounced. The wrestlers have been getting paid in cash, which is quite uncommon for major Japanese promotion to do. I mean, at one point, Old Japan was having a similar kind of problems, and Muto would actually pay the wrestlers or the staff with tickets to shows so they could go scalp them and make some money off of them themselves, maybe. yeah, it's very tough for them at the moment. But there is some good news. NTV, which was the channel that cancelled them, the network television channel that cancelled them, originally cancelled them because they didn't have the money to continue running it. They were in a bad place financially, so they said, well, we need to cut the budget. What do we cut? And they said, well, wrestling costs quite a bit. Of course, there was a lot of people within NTV who protested this because it had been on TV since 1954. So that's a very long time. One of the people I remember was apparently a major TV announcer, like news broadcaster, who got his start in pro wrestling, started in old Japan as an announcer of some description, and he said, okay, you can't cancel this. And so there was a lot of people within NTV who protested that. But apparently there's still interest in wrestling, because they still have Noah run the NTV Cup. They're still sponsors, they're still invested into Noah, and they still run pro wrestling on TV. It's just they're showing classics of old Japan, and I guess they're showing classic wrestling on their channel. So obviously they still have an interest in wrestling, but now they've got their budget back under control. So potentially Noah could get their TV deal back. At the time when they lost their TV deal, it was spoken about that it might be only temporary until NTV could get their budget back under control, which they have now. So they maybe bring back Pro Wrestling Noah. It'll still be at about hour at like 1:30 or something in the morning, but it is a step forward for them because it'll bring back their TV advertising revenue from TV. It'll mean the product will have the kind of exposure they need to pay the talent again, to run shows and actually draw. I mean, things are so bad that with their most recent Budokan show, I remember reading it only drew 7,500 fans, I believe, and then apparently it only drew 5,500 fans, and this is a building that can seat 17,000. So think of that. A building that can seat 17,000 and they only drew 5,500, and even then it was heavily papered, which means people got discounted tickets and things of that nature. But then there is still talk of the split. Now the split will come down as a butting of heads between Kenta Kobashi, Noah's biggest star, and Ryu Nakata, who's the head of business in Pro Wrestling Noah. Basically, Ryu Nakata wants to cut the older talent. He wants to get rid of the older guys because they don't draw like they used to. They can't wrestle like they used to, so they slow down the pace of the shows. And so he thinks they're hurting the product and the business. Kenta Kobashi says, no, these people are my friends, but basically, and they can still draw. So that's where the whole thing of the split is coming from. Kobashi will form his own promotion with older guys, and Noah will have some younger guys still. And of course, this would be quite bad because Kenta Kobashi's promotion of older dudes, established veterans, might not be able to draw in the long run because people will get injured due to being old. Not being able to put on match quality, the top quality matches, so it would hurt it in the long term. Or it would hurt in the long term because they wouldn't really be able to continue drawing. They would eventually have to create new stars. Pro Wrestling Noah, on the other hand, might not be able to draw initially, or permanently might be hurt by a split because they wouldn't be able to get in the big names they need to draw in the casual fans. The guys from the 90s, Kenta Kobashi, Jun Akiyama, Kenji Muto, Masahiro Chono, they are still amongst the biggest drawing guys in wrestling still. All the big draws are from the 90s, so if Noah had no big draws from the 90s, they would be in quite a bit of trouble because they would basically be drawing numbers equivalent to an indie promotion. They probably wouldn't run Budokan because they wouldn't have the people to draw in the fans, unless, of course, that they were able to organise something where they brought in older guys to put over the younger guys, but they still would have a hard time creating new stars. A lot of this has to do with, Noah not acting earlier and promoting new stars and pushing new stars. They took too long to do it, and because of that, it's very hard to get guys over now with business at its lowest point. So there is that. there may be a split. I personally don't think there will be a split. And as for their getting TV back, I'm uncertain about that. I wouldn't get my hopes up about it, really. So I think Noah will just continue to decline in business for a while. Eventually, at some point, it'll balance out. But yeah, things are quite bad for them, as it is for the rest of wrestling in Japan. That's all I have to say. Goodbye. Hopefully, I didn't bore you too much.